Welcome to our first ever podcast of Soul Talk, and today I've got Joe Sutton with me.
Hello.
Joe, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a bit of dance background as well?
Yeah, so I'm 21 years old. My name's Joe. It's actually Jordan, but all my family call me Joe, so that's just what I go by.
It would actually be so weird if I called you Jordan.
Yeah, people are like, who's Jordan? And I'm like, it's me. But yeah, so I've danced for too long. Probably for like 15, 16 years now. And started teaching 8 years ago nearly. Yeah, I've just finished my degree in commercial dance, and I'm currently just living life and working and teaching, and yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about sort of the dance background. Obviously, we do know each other personally as well. And I think a lot of what's been coming up lately is dance and mental health. I know there are pioneers out there now who are starting to look more into this, and we're hoping actually to have someone come to our students soon to work on sort of mindset. And I suppose it was really great to get your perspective on that, because I think at my age now I've started to sort of come out of that now. But I think for many, especially with lockdown being in the process of this as well, I don't know if that's affected people more in your generation, maybe a little bit more than it has in mine. But let's hear from your perspective, what?
I think it's a funny one. I think with dance there's it can be really, really good for your mental health, and it can be really, really detrimental. And that fine moves with different people, like the line moves. And I think for me, I've had a lot of really good experiences and a lot of really, I wouldn't say traumatic, I'd just say experiences that have affected me more than I realised at the time.
Okay.
In terms of the pandemic.
So at what point were you at during the pandemic? So what was that?
I was finishing college during the pandemic, so I went to dance uni literally in 2020.
Oh, right.
So started then. And it was a really strange transition, because we'd had all of those months of sort of nothing. And then, as you know, dance uni is it's intense. I think people think we go and we're prancing around all day, and it's not.
The amount of times I've heard that, where people just think that's what you do on a dance screen. There's so much detail in that. Yeah, of course.
And I think it's very niche, and the people who get it will get it. But it's not that. It's 12 hours of cardio every day. You've still got full-time uni assignments. You've still got X, Y, and Z, and it takes such a jump from either just training in the studio to then go into that full time, or even if you are at dance college, unless you're there full time 24/7 at one of these dance unis, I think it's really hard to adjust. I didn't do dance at college, so I'd never trained literally until I went to dance uni.
So you really dived in the deep end.
Yeah. And I think we didn't even get the experience of the transitional phase, because I think within a week of being there, we were on Zoom.
Oh, wow. Oh, right. Okay. So you actually experienced being at uni on Zoom. Right. And how was that for you?
It was difficult. I think I was pretty lucky with the space that I was living in to be able to do it. But I know there was other people who were training in not a dorm room, but student accommodation, bedrooms, and they had no more space than the sofa that we're sat on. But even when we went back into the studio, we had completely separate groups. We weren't allowed to mix. So there was my flatmate, who I've just moved out of. We were at uni together. I didn't actually meet her, have a proper conversation until the second year of uni.
Right.
Because there were certain groups that had to be completely separated, so we didn't get to know more than half of the year. You only knew the 30 people that you were in a bubble with.
Wow, and that's like, I can't imagine how hard that is, because your first year of uni is about that.
Yeah.
It's meeting new people.
Yeah.
I suppose getting to know who you have things in common with as well, because it's likely that's who you'll probably move in with then.
Yeah.
In second year, that must have felt so strange to have sort of missed that whole chapter and then only be getting to know people in your second year.
Yeah. We were, in all honesty, like the group of boys that were in our year, we were quite lucky. We got moved into another group.
Oh,
so
right.
We kind of knew, like, I'd say 80% of the year, whereas there were some people who didn't have any sort of interaction. There were no, like, you trained in the studio, you danced, you ate in the studio.
Right.
There was no, like, mingling at lunch. There was no... Even with the other years, we were in a completely separate building to the rest of the uni for the first year. So, like, unless you already knew people within the uni that you'd had previous friendships with or knew or whatever, you didn't really get to know anybody, which was, I think, particularly like moving to a new city and having all those first time experiences of like living on your own and having that freedom, but then not being able to do anything with it. Is really, it was so frustrating because, like,
you didn't really get the feel of that uni life, because your first year is the excitement and your party years, and like second year start knuckling down a bit, and then third year is like you have to knuckle down now, like, really. So how did that feel going into second year then? Like, did that affect anything once you all moved into that year, or do you feel like maybe you actually adapted well and got used to,
I think,
being able to see each other again and things being like quite normal again?
It was different for everyone. So it was really nice. The first time, like, we got back into second year and everyone was like, all the groups got mixed, so we was with different people and dancing and making new, like, connections and relationships with everybody else, it was really nice. But then it kind of got overshadowed by the fact of, right, we're in second year. Like you said, we literally missed
having that extra work
and I think it's just very intense, and I think people underestimate how intense it is. And seeing that, I lived with somebody from back home, and she was doing a full-time course at Manchester Met, and from what I know, she was in like 6 hours a week, and then the rest of the week was to do assignments. And to me, I was like, that's crazy.
Wow. Like, it felt like part-time.
Yeah, that's like not even half a day.
Yeah.
And I think it took a toll more on, and this isn't really to do with dance, but I think it'll be relatable. So the financial side of that, of dance uni, is something that you don't really prepare for. They don't take into consideration with, like, your student finance or anything like that, that you are literally in more hours than a full-time job. And
I get that. Okay.
Whereas like my flatmate was still classed as full-time,
right,
but only had to be in 6 hours a week.
Wow. Yeah.
So then your job opportunities for that, you're dancing 12 hours a day, and people would be going and doing like night shifts and coming back in the night after, because that was the only time we could work.
Yeah.
To like fund being in a big city. And so I think that kind of aspect of just sort of the vocational training is like not really spoken about. But I know that was a massive stress for a lot of people, and especially with COVID, there was no jobs. Yeah. So that first year really
so not actually having that time to dedicate yourself to a job that would have enough hours to financially be keeping up with everything you need to do when you're living out at uni alone.
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you say that this is because it's dance?
Yeah.
Because I know myself when I was at college, and I went to a university, it wasn't necessarily like a dance institute, but I did a dance degree, and we would be in 9 till 5. I suppose it would be expected. Then you're obviously going to have the extra rehearsals. I mean, at college, I spent all day and all night there. There's a lot of times where I couldn't actually attend my outside dance classes because we were in rehearsing so much, and especially when you're in multiple other people's work, then you've got to stay that extra bit longer. Is it like performing arts that does that requires the extra time being put into it because of the nature of needing the rehearsals and needing to perfect actual like physical movement?
I think that's what it is. I think it's such a niche thing. We'll always say to like the kids, like the students of like a lot of dancing, especially when we're learning stuff or you're teaching a technique, it's muscle memory. Yeah. So like it does get drilled into you, like the more you're training, the more you're in, the more you're doing this, the better you're gonna get. And I think you do feel this like innate pressure to constantly be doing something. And I know I've been like, there's been points where I felt guilty that I'm having to work and I'm not in a class. I'm not in an open class. I'm not doing 10 open classes a week because I'm having to work. And that's kind of frustrating.
And is this like during your actual course, or is this like outside classes?
Both.
Right.
So like mainly outside classes, but there were points where my course probably suffered, or like not my dedication to it, but my ability to be there was hindered by the fact of if I don't if I don't work, do you know what I mean?
Of course.
I can't, if I don't pay, like if I don't make the money, I can't be there.
That's such a predicament to be in, isn't it? And I think it's important to be able to balance both. What would you say? Obviously, it's a lot of physical training that you've had to do. Is it because it's so physical that it eventually takes a mental toll on you? Like, how does that affect your mental well-being?
I think it's with dance. I feel like I was thinking about this earlier, and I've been having sessions regarding this with a private lesson that I do, and the more I think about it, I feel like the closest thing I can explain to dance is there's just a lot of crossovers with like modeling. In terms of, it's almost on a very basic like level, it's just moving your body, and it has to look a certain way. And I think the thing that people don't consider as much with dance is that you stood in a mirror 12 hours a day. And it's like you stood next to all these other people who are training, or and it's that constant comparison. One of the things that was said to me, and I was probably in the best shape I've ever been in, and I was the skinniest I've ever been in, and I was told, you'll be great and you'll book jobs if you lose weight and you bulk up and you look like this. And at that time I was really stressed. I wasn't eating properly, and like that's the reason why I was in that shape. It wasn't a healthy reason. And when that got progressively worse, I was then told, oh, you look really good.
Wow.
And it was kind of that thing of it's so confusing because you know that you're wrecking your body because you can't survive doing 12 hours of cardio a day at one meal.
That's not
then
a healthy body.
At the same time, you're getting praised for doing that. And I don't think that's intentional. I think it's the way that the industry's sort of ingrained it in us.
It's such a weird one, isn't it? Because there are so many different sections of dance. You have commercial dance where the way you look seems to be the main importance. You know, this is why we do portfolios, and the first thing we have to do before we get in the job is like they need to know what we look like, what your height is. You need a body image, you need the headshot, and that is the main thing. And that has been drilled into us that when you approach auditions, that's ultimately what they're looking for. You know, and I've been to an audition before where they were after a certain type of cast that they already knew before we were auditioning, if they wanted like dark hair and stuff, and you see it in the casting calls already. So, and then you have another side where if you take away the mirror, you're just moving your body, expressing and creative, and like that's a side that as I've grown, can't believe now how much I've really wanted to be in commercial work and industry, and felt like for me that's where I was really losing myself. I didn't know what I was anymore. I felt like I was trying to mimic like so many different people, and it's taken really like physically actually stripping away a mirror and not choreographing it anymore to like find that. And working with other choreographers who also are providing that for other people. Like I know for me, like Ricky Jinks has been like amazing, because I was like, oh thank God, like there's someone out here doing this, because we're all about to lose like who we are. And I
think that's the thing as well, like when you're doing, especially when you're doing like vocational dance or you're doing your studies, a lot of the like practitioners that you have to do loads of research on. It's like George Balanchine and it's people like that where, of course, they're at the forefront of like big dance movements and they have so much influence. But at the same time, you're then still having to research things where they're saying like, don't quote me directly, but it's like he wanted to see the bones of his dancer, and we're having to like learn things like that, and this is the person that you should aspire to base your ballet off, or you this, and I think as like teachers as well, like it's then that responsibility then falls on us to
like sort
create
of pass
those spaces
down.
And I think that's the thing that's like starting to change, of like
definitely
this sort of past 5-10 years of teachers has been more about breaking those like generational curses,
those boundaries. And you can really see it and feel 100%. It, because everything we spoke about there, I feel like possibly like 6-7 years ago now, but now you see in like commercials of all shapes and sizes, all different colours and looks, and like if anything it's heading towards like the more unique and sort of you know out there you look, that can really work for you now, whereas once upon a time that wasn't like even in the question of like casting or auditions. Like what's a fine line between being in the dance industry and being a dancer? Where does that boundary cross over then, where it's mentally becoming like unhealthy?
I think when you lose there's a section of dance, like you were saying, is like where there's no mirror and you're just dancing for the enjoyment of it. And I think as soon as you lose touch with that side of dance, it's very hard for it not to become negative all of a sudden. And like it goes back to the thing of when I've had a lot of conversations with other teachers about this, of like as soon as dance becomes your income, it becomes stressful, and like it's hard to look at it as a enjoyable thing when
as an outlet, an expression,
because it's tied to this like idea of, well, that's my income, so it has to be this way, and it has to be that, and it has to be this, and there are automatically like expectations put on it. Whereas you're not just like, I've got she won't mind me talking about this, but I've got a girl that I take for a private lesson, and she's like a junior doctor. She doesn't want to dance professionally, she just loves to learn, and she loves to dance. And the sessions that I've been having with her have completely like made me fall back in love with dance again.
That's so great.
And it's because it's not like she's not looking to get better in a sense of for a professional reason, or for like to get this or to get that. She just wants to get better because she likes it. And we've done a lot of work of like, because she's not getting that professional gain out of it, what can she get out of dance on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So we've like looked
and actually probably something like, have you even been able to look at that yourself in amongst all how busy it's been and you know, trying to get through your degree?
We had a session not maybe like a month or so ago, and we were doing like, we do a lot of freestyle and working on different like ways she can move. And we did one where I gave her a prompt. The prompt was, I want you to dance and say something that you haven't said to anybody. No, not. Oh, okay. I want you to dance and say something to somebody that you haven't ever been able to say to them.
Okay.
And she freestyled, and there was tears and there was a lot of things, and it was, she just had a conversation with herself, and there was no words. We just stuck some music on and she danced, and she finished it and literally just dropped to the floor and cried, and like we hugged it out and we spoke, and she was like, I won't go into details because it's personal business and whatnot. She was like, I feel like I've put this issue in a box and pushed it away and not dealt with it for a couple of years because I haven't wanted to.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that and it was more of a realization for me of like, I need to do that for myself. Of like something that you can't say but you can say, just moving or just working through something without having the like expectation of having to explain your feelings or having to explain anything. And like that's a core like teaching moment where I was like, that's what I need to do for everybody that I teach.
And more of that. I suppose like as teachers, we just, the stuff that we teach, like we haven't necessarily provided that for ourselves, but it's because we weren't brought up with teachers like that. We were brought up so completely differently and taught so differently too. Like, I'm envious of all the students that have these teachers now who have learned from that last generation and gone, right, this is unhealthy, this can't carry on. And if it does carry on, the mental state of people coming out of dance schools and institutes and universities is not going to be good at all. And when you've got something as amazing as dance, like being able to use that as a stimulus with the student that you had there, how amazing that could bring something like that out of it for someone who would maybe class herself as like a non-dancer but is doing it as a hobby, to be able to actually take something from real life and be able to physically express it. Like, that's beautiful. Like, that is the best thing about dance.
Like, I watched, there's a video of it and she I think she posted it online, and like even just when we spoke about it afterwards, and like it makes me emotional thinking about it because she just throws herself into it without like, having any expectation, and it's so rare to see. She's like mid to late 20s, so like even as an adult, just throwing yourself into something that you can't do or you're not comfortable with. I still probably couldn't do it. Like, and complete. Like,
it's brave, isn't it?
Just complete and utter like disregard for any expectations, and like that's really inspiring. And I think, I don't know what I think because it's completely gone out of my brain.
I think that and a lot of people agree with this, and I hear so many people, like, I think when you're around dancers a lot, you start to get this a lot from people who are like, we are trained in such a certain way of how to be as a dancer, how we learn as dancers, the expectations, like you said, of what we're supposed to get out of dance and the person we're supposed to have molded into by the end of that when you're surrounded by that all the time, sometimes it takes that outside person to 100%. Actually show you actually what dance is to them without having all this stuff around it. And that's been that moment there and that's probably why it's made you like, oh my God, because when have we ever been shown that? Like, really, you know? And so I love bumping into people who just like dance for a hobby, and they get to express it, because I'm just like, that was me, like at one point, and then all this stuff came in, and then you sort of lose yourself amongst it. But like, I think there is a way to find it back now, and I think more people are starting to look towards meditation, centering yourself, doing a lot of things that are out of the mirror, like physically taking that away, makes such a difference. Like, I don't know about you, I don't choreograph in a mirror at all.
No, I choreograph.
Sometimes I want to brush up like some of the moves and stuff because I can think things look like and feel amazing. I go off like if it feels good, then it's good. But do you choreograph?
I choreograph in my kitchen at 3 a.m. in the morning. Genuinely, like that's
still living that student life.
Yeah, that is.
You know, I think that's just dancers.
Yeah.
If you that time is the time when you're creative, you've just got to sort of do it there and then.
And it's just as and when, like, as soon as I have something, I need to just act on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's just, you can't be creative on a schedule.
The kids think I'm crackers because I'd be like, look, I dreamt this last night.
Yeah.
Like, it stayed with me in my head. I've not wanted to lose it. And I've seen all this stuff and been like, right, okay, like, I've had a vision at like 2 a.m. this morning and we're going to try it out in person.
There's been times I've been on the way to the studio and I've had something planned and then I'm listening to something in the car on the way and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. And I like choreographing the car on the motorway. And I'm like, you're all going to have to bear with me because I don't know if it works, but I want to try it.
That's it. And like, that's where it's hard, isn't it? Because you have like your creative output that's like, and I feel like a lot of people in performing arts industry, like we all have that side of crazy where we do need to be scatty sometimes because that's where the creativity comes in. Like organization can really take that away. You need the freedom and time to go with that because then is it truly actually what you wanted to do? And you know when you find what you truly want to do, you can't settle for anything else. You have to go with that. And so then when you're in a class setting and you've got so much amount of time and you've got a schedule to be around, like what can people do to be able to do both of those things and find like a balance between them both?
I think in terms of if like you're going to a studio and you're dancing, and I think when it comes to being in class, having that like commitment, that's your schedule, the commitment and the giving 110%. You're going to have off days, you're going to have, everybody does. But I think having that as like, that's your consistency. And then your output is outside of that. And then I think it's hard because, and it's the same with a lot of things in dance that I find is there's always two sides to everything. And you almost have to build both sides up before you can put them together. I don't know, that you might completely disagree of like,
so when you say the two sides, as in, I think we're starting to differentiate like two different types of like dance, where we have the expressive side of like why we started dancing in the first place, like the love, the passion, being able to just express with anything, nothing else attached to it. And then you have the industrial training. Are you talking about that? Actually, it's important to have both because you want your training and your technique and you want the expressive side. But if you're wanting to, everyone that's going into institutes, colleges, it's with a passion and a drive to want to learn more, to want a better technique and to get to a certain place. And we can't deny that 100% like training in dance does that, and taking extensive training and, you know, invest in that time. But then it's really good to like, I have a student actually who we both know who says she freestyles every single day. Like outside the studio, I think we both know, like, she won't mind us saying this at all. But for me, I was like, oh, I used to do that all the time until things got like really busy. But that was how like I started, like was freestyle, not class routine. I wasn't used to this whole routine thing. And so this generation now, they're like definitely more choreographic. And then freestyle now is actually a bit alien to them. They're like, what? We have to like just move to the music, like without any structure. That's it. So like, it is important to be able to have both because you want to technically be able to like grow as a dancer and in that learn new techniques and become versatile, but important to also have that side where you do just let your body let loose without feeling fear, without feeling like you're being judged, and without all the things that sometimes we can bring into class or take from other places.
And I think that's like with dance, as like, and as teachers even more, dance is really good for things like, it's always been really good for discipline and things like that. And I think there's still, within that, there are still like core values that we can still teach them, but still have that other side that we had to do on our own. That's what I mean, is in like there's two sides to it, but it's the thing of, still work hard and get the results and get the training and get the thing, but at the same time make sure that when you're doing that, to enjoy it. And it's such a fine balance of both.
It is. It's so hard, isn't it?
Because then there's also those times where you can enjoy it so much that then it's not enjoy it, that's maybe the wrong word, but of like, we're coming to dance class because it's fun and it's social and it's great, but you still want to have both of that, like you still learn the discipline, you still learn the other side of it, and it's just that balance.
That's it. And it is such a fine line, because you don't want it to be so much fun that it's sort of not being taken like seriously really, because there has to be a level of seriousness with it to get the progress that person's come for in the first place. And you don't want it to be so serious that you know, it makes people just want to stop dance altogether, because that's not what we want. I think the more artists and people who can build expressive free dance, the better. But what was I trying to get to? But what can we be doing in class? Because I think that people are starting to input a good balance of both now in class. What can people be doing more of now to find that balance in both of the class, in both of those things in a class setting? Like where is, like, obviously we know where the fine line is, but how can a bit more enjoyment and people being able to not lose themselves whilst training in dance? Like,
I think, like,
if it was you and you was to go back now, what would you have liked in your classes that would have helped you not go through what you went through?
I think this is probably why we maybe have slightly different standpoints on, not as in we have different views on it. I think the line probably sits slightly different for both of us. Whereas I went in with I always danced, I always trained, but in terms of formal training, I had none going into uni.
Right.
So I think for my worry is, as a teacher, I don't want to, and I think that, sorry, I'm going on 1,000 tangents, we will get to a point.
We always do this, we never stay on topic.
And I think that going in without that, that's probably what made the transition even harder, on top of all the other things, COVID and just the intensity of it, not having that discipline within dance really threw me. More than anybody else, because I think probably 98%.
That's such a contrast.
99% of other people who I went to uni with had that before. They had that, like, vocational training. They did it at college, or they did a foundation year, or whatnot. And I think for me, I wouldn't want that on any of the students, so I'm probably like a little bit stricter. Not even stricter, but
I didn't see that coming at all. I thought it was going to be like, so I'm totally chill with them.
No, but in terms of I know that not everyone.
Oh, as in, like, you want to prepare them for that if they're going to go and do that.
And it's not even that, I know not all of them are going to go and do dance, and that's absolutely fine. We don't expect anybody to do it, especially like, we train them as good as we can, get them to before they are ready to move on to the next chapter.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's never expected of, like, even the students that are absolutely incredible. There's never any pressure to be like, you have to go here or do this, or you have to dance. And we've had that, like you've had that with people.
Of course, and as much as you want them to go, I think that's just like, you just don't want to see the years of hard work and the talent, you know, sort of go to waste. But I'll come to that in a minute. Finish what you're saying, because I think, there's more there.
And I think within that, and I've had that with our urban class, there's a couple of them where I've been a bit harder on them, or not even harder, but like a bit more constructive with them.
Yeah.
And then seen a change of like, oh, I'm getting it. And then they found enjoyment from that bit.
Yeah.
And
like the light bulb just was like,
it switches. Yeah. And I think especially like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say any names. Like Phoebe.
Yeah.
Like there was, I think this was like towards the end of last year, and there was just something that,
and it was like such a massive turn.
And I literally saw 2 videos and they were about 6 weeks apart, and I was like, that is 2 completely separate people dancing.
Completely different.
And like even just like then getting that feedback of like, Phoebe, you've grown so much, she's gonna hate us.
I know, but like this is something we say to Phoebe in person all the time, and I think it's because she's been such a great example of why training and having the technique and stuff is important, because you to be able to see that in a student, but them find the enjoyment and have enjoyment in it as well. So like it's important to have the two, because I think if we'd have just like boom, 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 like thrown stuff, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Easily you can rewind that work, but because there's been the fun elements of stuff that we do in between it as well, and having a laugh in class and having a good, you know, connection with your teacher and them understanding your personality and how you work and working around that, but still being able to work that person hard and get the training.
That's probably where that's probably the biggest issue, like teaching wise, of like people being able to find that line. And it always takes a while with each class, and like it took me a while with the urban class, but once we got there, it made sense, and like they bully me every week for wearing the same outfit. and we can have like banter, but I can still be like, you're not bending enough, like come on,
that's it, you know. And I think, you know, maybe that's where that fine line is, of like just reminding people that like we're all human, we're all real people. Like you have teachers, you have students, but like we're all just human beings, and sometimes you just need some of that human connection and banter to be like, oh, okay, you are understanding how this is feeling at the moment, and we have also been through that before. And I think just having that and it not feeling like you've got the teacher, you've got the students, and like 100%. We're all in this sort of like robotic program where like I do this and then you do that. I think sometimes if you can just break that here and there, that can be a completely different class, you know. And they're the classes, I don't know for you, but they're the classes I enjoy
I love
the
it.
most. Where you have a little bit more community, there's a bit more connection, people are cheering and supporting each other, and it's not a quiet room where you're just being like 100%.
That's why I love teaching like kids. I think after and I've had this with a couple of kids classes, after the first like 6 weeks and everyone's like finding the footing, the kids are finding the footing with you, once you find that like line of they'll listen to you, like there's a bit more of like there's just this new, because it's just a new person, and that's all they see it as, because they're 5, which is expected. And I think I've had it with classes where it's been really, really hard work, and I think as teachers we don't ever really want to say that, because it's not, and it's nothing to do with the kids. I think it's just the environment.
That's it, and it's so much energy to give out, isn't it? Because kids have lots of energy like to give, and you sort of want to match that.
And I think there's the couple of times I've had the younger classes, as soon as I found that sweet spot, it's one of my favorite classes to teach, because there's so much energy and they love it, and they just want to, there's no expectation or shame about how you look,
literally. That is
it. They just dance,
and
that's, again, it just goes back to that point of like just dancing for fun.
And it's exactly that. And I've been saying this myself as well lately, and I think we've had a discussion about it, where you get so used to teaching students who like are progressing and growing, and so you get excited because you're like, oh, my choreography is like going to look really great on these, and you sort of fall into that where you're constantly teaching that same age group and stuff all the time, and before you know it, you're building other things, but still within that age group. And like, I forgot how much I loved just teaching like primary school.
It's great. It's
children,
so
like
fun.
doing after school clubs, and that is exactly that. Is that they're very fearless.
Yeah.
You know, I walked into a school once and I was like, guys, I'm going to put some music on and you can do whatever you want. I just want you to let loose, and whatever comes to you, just do it. And there was people like, there was one guy with like a guitar, and I was like, if I was to do that in a teenage class, I'd have been like
what?
Like, someone prompt me, because I'm not ready to like let loose. And you start to really care about what everyone else thinks. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, is like being able to switch that off. And that's what I love about kids, is that they just don't have that yet. And so catching them that early, sometimes I feel like you're inspiring me right now, because I need to go back to that now and go back to what that was like before I actually was so bothered about what I look like.
And I will say, especially just going back to the mental health thing, with when I was training at uni, and this wasn't on anybody else other than me and the pressure I put on myself, but if I didn't feel like I looked right, I wouldn't dance well. And there was a genuine direct correlation between me feeling bad about myself and not necessarily the effort, but the outcome of what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because it's
I get you.
It's such a weird thing to explain, but I couldn't go into a ballet class and I'm in tight clothing, and I'm not the biggest person in the world, I'm not the smallest person in the world in terms of being built or like size or whatever. But for the past 3 years, I've been the most self-conscious I've ever been, like, ever. And like, I'll go to my mum, she'll be like, you look like there's nothing on you. And I'm like, but then I go to uni, I'm the biggest there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's that constant juxtaposition of like people who are outside of the dance bubble and inside of it. And then I'm being told things like, oh, you do great if you lost another 10 pounds. Of course,
yeah. And like that, for me, that's so old school now. Like, we are done. And like what everyone else is as well. Like, we are done with people saying that now. Like, enough is enough. Let's stop telling people what they need to look like to be in the industry.
100%. What I will say on that, with like the whole body image thing, and I think without diluting the opposite gender, because I think there's even just outside of dance, there's so many things we could talk about with like body image with women.
Of course, yeah. Like, I feel like that is a whole.
And I think with dance at the minute, from what I've seen more recently, is like a lot of the body image is changed. Like, the body image values are changing, but not much is changing with the male side of it.
Yeah, tell us more about that, because I feel like this needs speaking about more. I don't know why we always initially go to a female's perspective on this.
Yeah. And I think it's still so important.
And it's as equally important, and I think that does need bringing up more.
And I think it'll always go back to this of, you need to be however tall, 6 foot tall, not an inch of body fat on you, and you need to be ripped.
Yeah.
And that literally for every single style you'll come across.
Yeah.
That's the ideal, or is the traditional ideal.
Yeah.
And I think it's starting to slowly change, but I think even in like the media scape of it, of like, you still won't see that. It's still it's still very Magic Mike, or
that's it. And you get this appeal with women as well, whereas like, you know, people want women to look a certain way, and now we're seeing like, you know, having bigger lips, having your lashes, like there's all these little things that are sort of, if you allow them to become like the norm of what a woman should look like. And this is what you're saying, with men as well of what they should look like. How have you seen that like affect people that you've been around that are dancers? Like, how did it affect you?
That aspect of not looking how I was expected to look, that's probably the biggest thing that impacted me through uni.
Really?
Of like, my worst nightmare was going to my final grad show and being told there was a number where I had to dance topless.
Right.
And like, I could not think of anything else that would have made me more uncomfortable.
And what was the needs like for it? Was that the nature of the piece? Like what was the reason behind that?
No, so they didn't ask. I'm just saying that's in terms of like, that was my worry about it, because I know they'd done it previously.
Oh, right.
But all the other lads were either built or they were toned and there was no body fat on them, which is fine. It's just, I don't have that body type. I'm not, like, if you ask my mum or a normal person, they'd be like, oh, you're skinny, but I don't feel it. And I've recently been drilled in to a lot of the training of, you're a boy, dance like a boy.
Right. Yeah.
Look like a boy, look like a man. There's a lot of like, you've got to have that sexual appeal, and whereas that's not something that, because also like that is absolutely fine, but when you are in 10 hours a day, it is also then hard to fit everything else in and then go to the gym 5 times a week and not literally.
Yeah, and it's definitely a rut like dancers can get themselves in where you're exhausting your body so much trying to achieve something like that. And it's not something you can keep up with long term, you know. And we know this with like being a professional dancer, you know, it can be short lived for that reason. It's like, it's almost impossible. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with a gym like all day, every day on top of just like life. I'm sure a lot of people would relate to that. And so ultimately, was body image the main thing you struggled with?
I think body image and having a sort of balance, work-life balance. Like I was telling you the other week, I think I've only just had consistent weekends off for the first time in about 8 years.
That's mental. That's crazy.
That's more than like 3 in a row for the first time in 8 years. And I think having not only all these self-deprecating issues internally, but then not having a minute of
even like sort of
downtime.
Having downtime, and I think being able to just sit with those feelings and process them, and even look like where are they coming from, or how you can begin to deal with that. Like, what would you say for other people then who are now, I mean, we have a student here now who has gone on and is wanting to go more into the dance industry. Like, what advice would you give those people in trying to find, maybe the advice there actually is like finding balance, which I think is a constant thing that a lot of people are always trying to find all the time, and it's hard to get there, but it's doable. As well as that, like, what can they be doing to not let that affect them?
I think making sure that when you're there, go and work hard, do all the things you need to do. Take the pressure of, don't take everything literally. So when you're being, because when you're in like vocational training, you're being told this looks wrong, and it's when you, as soon as you get into that mindset of your body not being right or not being where it needs to be, everything that's told to you of like, this needs to look like this, and not even your body, just in terms of this move needs to look like this. So easy to get that caught up with.
As in, like, you start to personalise it to you.
Or it's because I've put on a couple of pounds, or it's because I've done this, or I don't look like that girl or that boy. And I think making sure that you're eating well is such a big thing. Like, not just going out and grabbing a meal deal because that's all there is, or you've got half an hour to eat, or just taking that 15 minutes either in the night before or the morning to like conscious. And it's not about, and I don't want to say that in terms of telling people what to eat and what not to eat, because again, I don't want to push that. It's just be very conscious of like what your body needs to actually function.
Yeah.
Rather than like watch what you eat, don't eat any.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like, food is for survival when it comes down to like the basics of like why we have food. It's for survival. And if you're not actually inputting that, you know, there's three main things you need to have is food, water, sleep.
Yeah.
If you take away like food and sleep there and you're only having water all the time, like,
and half the time
you cannot actually function.
Yeah.
Like, never mind even short term, but in the long term, you really have to be thinking about like, okay, 10 years from now, if I do this to my body, like, where am I going to be at?
And I think that's also the other thing as well, of like, especially if you're going into that transitional period of like going into degree training, of like, as you're finding your footing, use that time to find what works for you, what works for your body, because it's longevity. Like, your body's like your instrument.
Yeah.
And if you don't keep, I think that's one thing we don't realise, of like,
this is our work.
That's it. As soon as that goes, like, I had a back injury a couple of years ago from a trick that went wrong on stage, and that completely affected my degree training, because I couldn't jump for the whole 3 years because I wasn't allowed because of my back. I couldn't do a lot of the certain aspects of like, my body physically can't do that because of issues I've got with my own body. And I think just the care of like making sure if you've got a problem, make sure it's sorted. Don't just dance on it because you don't want to miss out, or you feel like you can't.
That's it.
Because for those, that 1 week you might be sat out might give you an extra year, an extra 5, an extra 10 years, depending on what the injury is and stuff. And you go to uni, you'll get given a pastoral support, but you've also have got the option of, that's not your only support. There's organisations, there's people that you'll meet outside. And I will say I'm going to give her a shout out, because my head of year in third year, Catherine, was genuinely the saving grace of my degree. And I've told her this, if you ever listen to this. I have never known somebody in like a vocational dance space to care about the well-being of people so much.
Yeah.
And she was a shoulder to cry on. She was the person you'd go to if you had a problem. But also at the same time, she'll tell you like, right, you need to do this. And in that, like, right, we'll sit down, we'll make a plan, and then
let's be productive.
You're an adult.
Yeah, you can work it out.
We'll do a plan. Yeah. You then do the plan. If you need anything, come back. And honestly, that woman is an absolute godsend. And if you can find people like that, and not just within mentors, but within your own friends, of like, they're the kind of people you need to surround yourself with. Because again, it goes back to the thing of, it's a culture.
Yes.
So if your environment, your culture's right, you'll be right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I think within any setting, that who you surround yourself by is going to help mold you into what you're becoming.
Yeah. 100%.
And you know yourself, there are circles where you can lose yourself, and there are circles where people are the making of you.
Yeah.